Why do you believe that those judges should not be restored?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily phrase it that way. I mean, in Pakistan, excuse me, in Pakistan, the parliament is king, and if 2/3 of the parliament say the judges should be restored, then
nobody can stop it.
I am in no position to. Then that's the law. That's it. What I would just urge is that everybody take a look at the events that led up to it and the law that led up to it. I've just gotten done with a 40-page research product on it from my think tank back in Washington. But one thing people should understand about the judges, and it bothers me that the judges who took the oath are considered stooges. And I can see how, not knowing the intricate background, people might come to that conclusion. Those men were actually compelled by a Supreme Court precedent to take those oaths. They didn't have a choice. In 2002, in the Qazi Hussein Ahmed case, the Supreme Court examined the role of judges in a situation where there was a partial suspension of the Constitution. And they specifically said that you cannot resign en masse. In fact, they wrote that it was the most detestable thing to do because it would tend to close down courts and it would essentially lead to anarchy.
But nobody listens to this, Thomas. I mean, if you were sitting right now across the table from Mr. Aitazaz Ahsan, who is the chairman of the Supreme Court Bar Association and who was the main counsel to Chaudhry Iftikhar, who was the former Chief Justice. So if you're sitting with Aitazaz Ahsan, how would you tell him that you know he should look at it in a different way?
I would have absolutely no problem, because Aitazaz Ahsan, who, listen, I think he's a patriotic Pakistani. I admire him in many ways. This is no dishonest man. This man believes what he says, and he fights. But if he leans across the table and says, on what authority do you say that judges can be removed because they don't take fresh oaths, or that they have to take the new oath if they're offered? And I should finish that. They're also required to ignore the part that says that they can't hear cases against the government because that's unconstitutional. That's the Supreme Court's word. And if he were to ask me, on what grounds do you base this? My answer is the 2002 Qazi Hussein Ahmed decision, who his client joined in the opinion on. Justice,
you mean the former Chief Justice?
The former Chief Justice is a PCO justice himself. The senior justices who decided not to take the oath or weren't offered oaths under the PCO took office when, in 2000, judges refused to take the previous oath. Justice Chaudhry took the place of one of those justices who refused to take the oath, and then signed on the decision making their dismissal both constitutionally valid and final. So if anyone's in a difficult position to argue this case, with all the respect in the world, it's Aitazaz Ahsan.
Really? Now, what do you say if I tell you that? No, I mean, do you think that the election of the president for the second term is disputed? Can it be made disputed?
No, and that's what sparked the crisis. As I said, the Constitution's clear. I mean, 2/3 ratify the constitutional amendment. The Supreme Court has ruled constantly that it's one thing for a Supreme Court to say that a statute is unconstitutional, but to knock down a properly ratified amendment, and I must make this clear, I'm unaware of any Supreme Court in the history of the world that has ever claimed that power in the face of Parliament. And the Parliament ratified the 17th Amendment, and in the 17th Amendment was a clause that essentially said, the holder of the office, Pervez Musharraf, could run, notwithstanding anything else in the Constitution that said he couldn't. And the court examined that in 2005, and this is the old court, and they found that it wasn't their place to substitute their judgment for the will of Parliament, which, after all, was the representation of the democratic will of the people of Pakistan. And what ended up happening was apparently the justices of one panel hearing a series of cases were prepared to knock down one or two articles of the Constitution, at which point Pervez Musharraf said, "I'm not having that."
So what's the one-liner conclusion here?
The one-liner conclusion is it's regrettable because some good men were lost. Justice Ramde, there are some fine jurists who refused to take the oath, and to not have them involved is difficult. But I don't think that those men, there's no question that those men knew what the Supreme Court precedent demanded of them. And I certainly can't see punishing Chief Justice Dogar or Justice Abbasi or Justice Khokhar because they read the Qazi, Hussein Ahmed case and did what it told them to do.
Okay, great. We're almost out of time, Thomas. My last question, I know you're running a think tank also in Washington, D.C. Where do we stand on the Pakistani-American relationship? In the past few months we've exchanged, by the way, some very tough statements from Washington. Some people were saying that they want to see U.S. boots on Pakistani soil. From here, there were answers that we'll consider that an invasion. At the same time, we have lobbies in both capitals who would like to, for us to be real good allies. We've been very good allies during the Cold War, and there's no reason why we should continue. Your take on it?
Well, I mean, Pakistan is an ally, not an American servant, and there's an issue of sovereignty here. If the people of Pakistan or the government of Pakistan don't want Americans chasing insurgents on Pakistani soil without assistance from Pakistani forces, they have a perfect right to make that clear. I would also say that if there's any sort of healing to be done, I would hope it would be done by the United States.
How is that? Why is that?
Because I think that aid has been slow in coming to Pakistan. You're talking about a nation that, because it agreed to become an ally in the war on terror, has incurred significant costs, has incurred 1,500 dead. And I think it'd be nice if my country would stop claiming that you guys weren't doing enough, because I think the families of those dead servicemen would beg to differ.
But there are people who say that there's mismanagement of that aid. There are people who say that we're playing a double role. On the one hand, having one foot with the war on terror, the other foot helping the terrorists. Although there's no evidence to it, really, a lot of conjecture.
I've seen no evidence, and I regard that as ridiculous. What it comes down to is I just don't think my country has rendered enough aid, military or civilian. You guys have incurred costs, and I don't think it's out of place for you guys to expect the United States to help you with those costs. But without getting too technical, fighting insurgents in mountainous terrain is not something that can be done slowly on foot. You have to surround them. That almost certainly requires heliborne forces to encircle people. Well, where are the helicopters? I mean, I think Pakistan has seen Americans or the United States lavish aid on many other countries with much less serious problems. And the bottom line is, I just don't think my country is doing enough for this country.
Well, Thomas, we'll have to stop here. We're almost out of time, but it was really good to have you, and I look forward to, of course, to getting your insights on various issues in the Pakistani-U.S. relationship in the future as well. We'll be definitely in touch. I hope you have a good stay here.
Very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
And I see you're wearing this pen with the Pakistani and the American flag, and
yes.
Somehow it just takes me back to the Cold War days, the good old days, really. Anyway, so you have to stay put, because next we'll continue this issue talking about the aftermath of the election, and I'll join you after this quick break. Thank you again, Mr. Houlahan. Good to have you. Thank you.